September 3rd, 2012, 6:15 in the evening. Medellin, Colombia, the Cardizo Butcher Shop on 29th Street. Griselda Blanco walked out carrying a slab of meat wrapped in white paper. She was 69 years old, stooped, gray-haired, a grandmother in flat shoes. The motorcycle came from her left, 2 riders. The passenger raised a 9mm. He fired twice. 1 round entered her skull above the left ear. She dropped onto the sidewalk beside her pregnant daughter-in-law. Blood pooled into the gutter. The motorcycle vanished into traffic. The whole hit took seconds. This wasn't just another cartel hit. The woman bleeding out on that Medellin sidewalk had been linked to more than 200 murders. She'd helped build the Miami cocaine pipeline before Pablo Escobar was a household name. She'd buried 3 husbands, mothered 4 sons, and earned a nickname that terrified men twice her size. The Black Widow, La Madrina, the cocaine godmother. And here's the part that mattered most. The motorcycle drive-by killing that ended her life, her own gunmen were among the first to make it famous. This is the story of how a poor girl from Medellin helped build a cocaine empire on Miami concrete. How she outkilled most of the men around her during the deadliest decade in American crime history. How she made enemies of cartels, federal agents, and her own family, and how her own methods finally circled back and put her in the dirt. But here's what the documentaries gloss over. Griselda wasn't just a drug dealer. She was an architect. She helped draw the blueprint that the cartels who came after her, Escobar's included, would follow. And for a brief, blood-soaked window in the late 1970s and early 80s, she moved cocaine into the United States on a scale few of her male rivals could match. You have to understand where she came from to understand what she became. Griselda Blanco Restrepo was born February 15, 1943, in Cartagena, Colombia. When Griselda was 3, the family moved to Medellin into a hillside slum. No running water, no electricity. Dirt floors. Children ran the streets like packs of dogs. According to her own later associates and the lore that surrounds her, Griselda was picking pockets young. And by her former lover's account, at 11 she allegedly took part in kidnapping a boy from a wealthy neighborhood, demanded ransom, and when the family didn't pay, shot him, 11 years old. Allegedly, she survived by hustling, prostitution as a teenager, forged paperwork. By her early 20s, she'd taken up with her first husband, a document forger named Carlos Trujillo. They had 3 sons, Dixon, Uber, and Osvaldo. The marriage ended the way most things in her life ended, with Carlos gone. Some accounts say she had him killed over a business dispute. Others say he died of cirrhosis. The accounts genuinely vary. What's clear is that by the early 1970s, Griselda was a mother of 3 with a growing taste for the trade and for violence. Then she fully partnered with Alberto Bravo, and everything scaled up. Bravo was a Medellin smuggler with ambitions bigger than his territory. They married. They moved cocaine north. At first, it was a few kilos at a time, hidden in the false bottoms of suitcases. But Griselda saw something the men around her didn't. She thought industrial. By the early 1970s, she and Bravo had set up shop in Queens, New York, Jackson Heights, the Colombian neighborhood that would become the beachhead for the South American cocaine invasion. This is where Griselda's genius started showing. She hired a designer in Medellin to make custom bras and girdles with hidden compartments. Each one could carry up to 2 kilos. She recruited women, stewardesses, tourists, housewives, grandmothers. They flew commercial from Bogota to JFK wearing the merchandise on their bodies. Customs barely looked twice at middle-aged Colombian women in modest clothing. The operation ran for years, moving steady volume into New York and feeding the city's exploding appetite for the drug. But that's not the crazy part. The crazy part is what she did with the money. She didn't bank it the way the Italians laundered theirs. She buried it in coffee cans, in safety deposit boxes under fake names, in the walls of safe houses across Queens. The cash piled up faster than she could hide it. Then came the indictment. April 30th, 1975. A federal grand jury in the Southern District of New York charged Griselda, Blanco, and 37 others, the result of an early DEA operation called Banshee. It was one of the biggest cocaine cases U.S. prosecutors had built to that point. By the time the indictment came down, Griselda was already back in Colombia, out of reach. She left behind safe houses, bodies, and a half-built empire. But she also left behind a blueprint. The Queen's operation became the model for everything that came next. Back in Colombia, things got ugly fast. Griselda and Alberto Bravo were sitting on millions in cash and accusing each other of skimming. In 1975, they met outside a Bogotá nightclub to settle accounts. According to multiple accounts, Griselda pulled a pistol and shot Bravo. His bodyguards opened fire. She caught a bullet in the stomach. When the smoke cleared, Bravo was dead, along with 6 of his men. Griselda survived. She walked out holding her stomach with one hand and took control of his share of the business with the other. Husband number 2, buried. Here's the thing about Griselda that nobody quite understood at the time. She wasn't running from anything. She was building toward something. By the late 1970s, she'd married her 3rd husband, Dario Sepulveda. She'd had a 4th son, Michael Corleone Blanco. Yes, she named her child after the Godfather character. And she'd moved her entire operation to a new city, Miami. Miami in the late 1970s was a sleepy retirement town. Pastel hotels, shuffleboard, a police department that wasn't ready for what was coming. Griselda saw all of it. The geography, the Cuban exile community, the endless coastline, the lazy federal presence. She set up in a mansion in the wealthy suburb of Pinecrest, and she went to work. This is where Griselda became something new, a woman running a paramilitary cocaine army. Let me break down how the Miami operation worked, because the mechanics matter. Step 1, the opportunity. Miami had 3 things no other American city had: direct ocean access to Colombia, a large Latin American immigrant population that gave her foot soldiers cover, and a banking sector hungry for cash deposits with few questions asked. Step 2, the muscle. When Castro emptied his jails and let roughly 125,000 Cubans sail from the port of Mariel in 1980, a small but violent minority had criminal records. Griselda recruited some of the hardest of them, killers, enforcers. She paid them, gave them apartments, cars, and women. Step 3, the structure. She built cocaine cells across Miami-Dade County. Each cell handled a different function: importation, cutting, distribution, collection, enforcement. No cell knew what the others were doing. Step 4, the money. At her peak around 1979 and 1980, Griselda was moving an estimated 3,400 pounds of cocaine per month into Miami. At the height of her operation, that translated into as much as $80 million a month. Step 5, the problem. Griselda enjoyed killing too much, and it would eventually destroy everything. Because here's what made her different. Pablo Escobar killed for business. Carlos later killed for territory. The Ochoa brothers killed when they had to. Griselda Blanco killed because she liked it. Her gunmen helped pioneer the modern point-blank motorcycle hit. Before Griselda's cruise, cartel killings leaned on parked cars, ambushes, kidnappings. Her people put shooters on motorcycles in pairs. The driver weaved through traffic. The passenger fired through car windows at stoplights. By the time witnesses processed what they'd seen, the bikes were 3 blocks away. Her enforcers, the pistoleros, are credited with some of the first of these motorcycle assassinations, a method that became a hallmark of the cartels who followed. Between 1979 and 1982, Miami-Dade County experienced what people later called the cocaine cowboys era. The murder rate climbed to the point where the medical examiner's office was so overwhelmed it reportedly leased a refrigerated trailer just to store the bodies. By the early 80s, Miami led the nation in homicides, and a significant share of those killings traced back to one woman. The Dadeland Mall shooting, July 11th, 1979, a liquor store called Crown Liquors beside the mall in South Miami. 2:30 in the afternoon, shoppers everywhere, children, families. Two of Griselda's gunmen walked in carrying machine pistols. Their target was a Colombian cocaine dealer named Herman Jimenez Paneso. They cut him down along with his bodyguard, Juan Carlos Hernandez. By the time they walked out, 2 men were dead. The storefront looked like a war zone, and they were gone. They fled in a van police later nicknamed the War Wagon, its sides lined with weapons and bulletproof vests. The Dadeland hit shocked America. It was the moment the country realized something new had arrived. Open warfare on American soil, machine guns at a shopping mall, and the woman behind much of the bloodshed was sitting 45 minutes south. But that's not even the worst of it. In 1982, Griselda's men went after a rival named Jesus Castro. They opened fire. They killed Castro. They also killed his 2-year-old son, Johnny, struck by a bullet meant for his father, according to her former enforcer, Jorge Ayala, who later testified against her. She wasn't bothered by it. By his account, she said the boy would only have grown up to be like his father. Here's where it gets darker. Because while Griselda was building this empire of blood, her personal life was unraveling. Her third husband, Dario Sepulveda, wanted out. He wanted to take their son, Michael Corleone, back to Colombia and live a normal life. Griselda refused. So Dario kidnapped his own son and fled to Bogota. Griselda allegedly put a bounty on her own husband's head. In 1983, a team of sicarios cornered Dario in Colombia. They posed as police officers, pulled him over, and shot him to death in front of his driver. Michael Corleone was returned to Miami. Griselda raised him as though nothing had happened. Husband number 3, buried. By the mid-1980s, the pressure was building. The DEA had hunted Griselda since the 1975 Queens indictment. Agent Bob Palumbo had been tracking her movements through informants, wiretaps, and financial records for years. He knew she'd left Miami. He suspected California. He just couldn't prove it. She'd moved to Irvine, California, a quiet suburb. Lawns, white picket fences. She rented a house under a fake name and told the neighbors she was a widow. She lived with her sons and ran her operation by phone. She thought she was invisible. She wasn't. February 17th, 1985. Around 5:30 in the morning, DEA agents and Irvine police surrounded the house. Bob Palumbo was there. He'd waited years for this. They breached the door. Griselda was asleep in a back bedroom. She didn't resist. She just looked at Palumbo and said, in English, "You got me." The arrest took minutes. She was extradited to New York to face the 1975 indictment. And here's a detail most retellings get wrong. There was no guilty plea in New York. A jury convicted her at trial in the summer of 1985. The judge sentenced her to 15 years in federal prison and fined her $25,000. And here's where most stories would end. But Griselda's didn't. Because while she sat in federal prison, Miami prosecutors built a new case against her in the mid-1990s. 3 murder charges, including the death of 2-year-old Johnny Castro. The death penalty was on the table, and the star witness was her former chief enforcer, Jorge Rivi Ayala. Ayala was ready to testify. He had detailed knowledge of dozens of hits. He could put Griselda on death row. But here's where it gets unbelievable. While in protective custody, Ayala carried on phone sex with secretaries from the state attorney's office. They got caught. The scandal blew up the case. With its star witness compromised, the state offered Griselda a deal. In 1998, she pleaded guilty to 3 counts of second-degree murder and was sentenced to 20 years to run alongside her federal time. She dodged the electric chair because the prosecution couldn't keep its own witness under control. Griselda served her time. By 2004, she was released and deported to Colombia. She was 61 years old. The empire was gone. And so, one by one, were her older sons. Dixon, Uber, and Osvaldo had all followed her into the trade, and all 3 were killed. reportedly in retaliation for the violence she had caused. Osvaldo was gunned down outside a Medellin nightclub in 1992. The exact dates and circumstances of Dixon's and Uber's deaths were never clearly documented, but both were dead before their mother. Only Michael Corleone survived. He eventually settled in Miami, got into reality television, and built a lifestyle brand around the family name. Back in Medellin, Griselda lived quietly. She rented a modest place. She kept a low profile. By some accounts, she'd become a born-again Christian and said she was tired, that she just wanted to be with her grandchildren. Some people believed her. Most didn't. You have to understand. In the cocaine business, there's no retirement. There are only enemies you haven't met yet. And Griselda had spent 40 years making enemies across 2 continents. Take your pick. September 3rd, 2012, 6:15 in the evening, Griselda walked into the Cardiso butcher shop on 29th Street in Medellin. Her daughter-in-law, 7 months pregnant, was nearby. Griselda bought meat for dinner. She walked out into the dusk. The motorcycle came from her left. 2 riders, black helmets. The passenger raised a 9mm. He fired twice. 1 round hit her in the head, just above the left ear. She was dead before she hit the pavement. The motorcycle accelerated into traffic and vanished. Police recovered the shell casings. They never identified the shooters. The case remains officially unsolved. The cocaine godmother, killed by the same kind of hit her own gunman, helped make famous motorcycle. 2 riders, headshot at close range, the exact method that had terrorized Miami 3 decades earlier. What did 40 years of bloodshed actually produce? Let's count it. Griselda Blanco has been linked to somewhere between 200 and 250 murders. Her organization is estimated to have moved tens of thousands of kilograms of cocaine into the United States across her active years, a flow worth, in today's terms, well into the billions. She generated enormous tax-free profits. She buried 3 husbands and 3 sons, and she died with almost nothing. The cash was gone. The properties were gone. The respect, the fear, the empire, all of it gone. Her legacy isn't the money. It isn't even the body count, though the body count is staggering. Her legacy is the template, the cellular structure that compartmentalized risk. The use of women as smugglers to exploit law enforcement's blind spots. The motorcycle assassination. The willingness to kill anyone, including children, to send a message. The cartels who came after her, Escobar included, inherited and refined those methods. Bob Palumbo, the DEA agent who finally caught her, has called her one of the most dangerous criminals he encountered in decades of federal law enforcement, and said the male cartel bosses looked tame by comparison. Here's the truth about Griselda Blanco. She wasn't a feminist icon. She wasn't a misunderstood mother. She wasn't a victim of her circumstances. She was a calculating, sadistic operator who happened to be a woman in an industry that didn't think women could do what she did. And she used that underestimation as a weapon. She moved more product than most. She earned more cash than most. And when the end came, it came the way she'd always known it would. On a sidewalk. 2 riders on a motorcycle. The method she'd helped perfect, used against her with precision. She lived by the gun. She built an empire with the gun. And the gun, in the end, owed her nothing. If this story pulled you in, hit subscribe. We drop a new mob and cartel breakdown every week. Drop a comment below. Who's the next cartel figure you want us to cover? We're reading every reply.